Where rivers meet the North Sea and ancient stones endure the wind, Tyne and Wear holds whispers of ghostly tales. Here, history lingers, and the past refuses to stay silent. Arbea Fort. On the windswept banks of the River Tyne, the ruins of Arbea Roman Fort rise in silence. Nearly 2,000 years ago, this was a key supply base for Hadrian's Wall. Soldiers from far-flung corners of the empire marched through these gates, bringing with them discipline, language, and the ever-present fear of death on the frontier. Today, the stone walls remain weathered and broken, but many say the place is not empty. Visitors have reported ghostly figures clad in armor, their footsteps echoing on gravel that no longer lies beneath their feet. One chilling account describes a single legionary seen in startling detail. At first, the witness thought he was part of a historical reenactment. The figure stood tall, helmet-polished cloak, drawn close against the wind. But when the soldier turned the face beneath the iron helm, was no living man. It was a grinning skull, hollow-eyed and pale against the dying light. The witness froze. For a heartbeat, the figure lingered, and then it dissolved into the dusk as though swallowed by mist. Others have spoken of hearing commands barked in Latin, or the faint clash of shields in the parade ground, though the fort has stood deserted for centuries. Even seasoned archaeologists working late have admitted to feeling watched, as though unseen sentries still guard the ramparts. When twilight settles and the last visitors leave the fort, takes on a different character. The air grows heavy, the shadows deepen, and some claim that the spirits of Rome, far from their homeland, rise once more to keep watch over the river. Whether they are echoes of history or restless souls, Arbea Roman Fort remains a place where the line between past and present grows thin. A reminder that empire may fall, but its ghosts endure. Theatre Royal. In the heart of Newcastle on Grey Street stands the Grand Theatre Royal. Its neoclassical facade gleams with elegance, a beacon of art and performance since the early 19th century. Thousands have passed through its doors, to laugh, to weep, and to marvel at the drama upon its stage. Yet when the curtain falls, another drama is said to begin. The most famous spirit of the theatre is known as the Grey Lady. According to legend, she was a 19th century patron who fell deeply in love with an actor. Their affair was kept secret, a passion whispered in the shadows of the stalls. They planned to run away together after his final performance. But on that very night, he confessed the truth. He was already married. The woman, broken by grief and shame, climbed to the highest gallery. There, in a desperate moment, she cast herself from the balcony to the stage below. Some say she jumped. Others whisper that she fell unsteady with despair. Whatever the truth, her restless presence has never left. Audiences have seen her drifting along the aisles, candle in hand, or seated silently in the very balcony where she died. Staff describe an icy chill on the neck, the sensation of being watched, or a glimpse of a pale figure vanishing into shadow. Yet she is not alone. A Victorian gentleman in a black top hat has been seen even greeting staff by name before dissolving into air. Monks in dark robes have wandered the back passages. Deep sighs, footsteps in empty corridors, and voices on the stage long after midnight have all been reported. The Theatre Royal remains a place of applause and spectacle. But when the lights dim and silence falls, one cannot help but wonder who still lingers in the gods above, forever watching the play unfold. Washington Old Hall. Amid quiet gardens and timbered walls stands Washington Old Hall. It is a house with deep roots linked to the ancestors of George Washington, the first president of the United States. The stone and oak that shape its rooms have witnessed centuries of lives, feasts, marriages, quarrels, and funerals. Within these walls, joy and grief have walked side by side, leaving an atmosphere that feels charged, almost heavy with memory. Folklore tells of a grey lady who roams the upper floors, her soft weeping echoing through the chambers. She is not alone. Another apparition known as the White Lady has been glimpsed drifting through the long galleries. Her gown trailing behind her, the faint fragrance of lavender clinging to the air. Some say she has been seen sitting quietly in a chair, gazing into the fire, as though lost in eternal thought. A former caretaker once described hearing the sudden scrape of a vase moving across a table when no one else was present, followed by a low sigh and the feeling of something brushing against his arm. Doors here refuse to obey, swinging shut or flying open as if in defiance of the living. On the staircase, heavy thumping has been heard, as though unseen feet are leaping from step to step. Stranger still are the sounds of children laughing, though no children are there. In the garden, a man dressed in 1940s clothing has been reported watching silently before vanishing among the hedges. And in the Great Hall, a figure of a man has appeared during wedding celebrations, standing apart, as though blessing or guarding the union. Visitors often remark that the hall feels beautiful, yet uneasy, a place of heritage where unseen company lingers. Some leave with a shiver, convinced that the old house is far from empty. By day, Washington Old Hall is preserved as a treasure of history. But when night descends and the last light fades from its windows, its true inhabitants may begin to stir. The Bridge Hotel, at the edge of Newcastle's medieval heart, beside the looming shadow of the old castle, stands the Bridge Hotel. From the outside, it is a welcoming Victorian public house, known for music, laughter, and the lively hum of conversation. Yet beneath its floorboards in the basement, where light is scarce, lies a reputation far darker. The basement houses the ladies' toilets, an unremarkable setting by day. But countless reports speak of figures moving in the mirrors, shadowed shapes that vanish the moment they are faced. One woman recalled washing her hands, glancing up, and seeing a tall, indistinct silhouette standing directly behind her. She turned sharply, but the room was empty. The only sound was the slow dripping of water from the tap. Another account tells of a group of friends descending together, their chatter faltering as the atmosphere grew colder. One of them swore she felt a presence leaning close, as if someone were whispering into her ear. They fled in silence, unwilling to return. Staff, too, have felt uneasy. On quiet nights, when the pub above is closing and glasses are being stacked away, heavy footsteps have been heard from the empty basement corridor. A former manager spoke of checking the rooms only to find darkness and stillness, though the sense of being followed clung to him all the way back upstairs. Some suggest that the building's foundations, pressed against centuries of buried stone, hold echoes of older lives. Others believe that the nearness of the castle, with its history of bloodshed and imprisonment, has left its mark upon the neighboring ground. Whatever the cause, the Bridge Hotel offers more than ale and song. It offers a reminder that even the most ordinary places can conceal a hidden shadow. And so, beneath the laughter, there lingers the question, when you glance into the mirror, are you certain you are alone? Hilton Castle. On the outskirts of Sunderland, where modern streets give way to a ruin of ancient stone, Hilton Castle rises. Its towers stand silent now, their windows blackened voids gazing over the land. Yet behind those walls lies a tale that has unsettled generations. The legend belongs to the Cold Lad of Hilton. He is said to have been Robert Skelton, a young stable boy in the service of the castle during the 16th or 17th century. Accounts vary, but most agree that Robert met a violent death at the hands of his master, or perhaps another servant. His body was hidden, his fate whispered in scandal, and soon the castle itself began to stir with strange unrest. For years the cold lad was mischievous. He clattered pots through open doors and left work half-finished, only to complete it by morning. Some nights his laughter rang out in the kitchens, startling those who passed. Other times he wept so bitterly that even hardened servants refused to remain alone after dark. In time, a ritual was performed to lay his spirit, and for a while his presence seemed to fade. But the castle has never been free of him. Modern visitors wandering near the ruins have reported the plaintive cry of a boy carried on the wind. Loud bangs echo from empty chambers, as if unseen hands strike the walls in anger. There are those who claim to have glimpsed the figure of a small child sitting in a window, only for the shape to dissolve when approached. One evening, a passerby heard laughter within the ruin, a burst of joy that ended in a chilling silence. The building is unsafe, closed to the public, yet its legend endures. Today, Hilton Castle stands as a heritage landmark, admired for its architecture. But as the night deepens and shadows gather in its broken halls, the cold lad is said to stir once more, reminding us that cruelty leaves long echoes, which no stone can contain. Bessie Surtees' house, on the Newcastle quayside, where the River Tyne winds past ancient merchants' homes, stands the timbered frontage of Bessie Surtees' house. Its carved beams and latticed windows recall the wealth of the 17th century, when prosperous families looked down upon the cobbled street below. Yet behind the beauty lies a story of love and defiance, ending in tragedy and haunting. Bessie Surtees was a young woman of noble birth. Her heart, however, belonged to John Scott, a man of lower standing. Their love was forbidden by her disapproving parents, who barred her from seeing him. But passion will not be silenced. One fateful night, Bessie crept from her chamber, opened the window, and climbed down into the darkness. Below, John waited with a horse, ready to whisk her away to Scotland, where they could marry in secret. Their escape was daring, yet their pursuers close behind met a grim fate at the steep stone stairway known as Dog Leap Stairs. Horses stumbled, men fell, and lives were lost in the chaos. For centuries, locals have claimed to hear the thunder of hooves at that very spot, echoing on nights when no riders pass. Some even speak of the sharp crack of reins in the darkness, followed by the muffled cries of men meeting their doom, though the stairway lies deserted. Within the house itself, Bessie's presence lingers. More than one passerby has sworn to see a pale young woman at the upper window, staring into the night with longing in her eyes. Sometimes she appears motionless, as though still deciding whether to leap for love. At other times, her shadow slips away before any living watcher can call out. There are even stories of footsteps on the wooden floorboards above light and hurried as though someone still steals away to the waiting horse below. The house remains preserved as a monument to history. Yet for those who pause beneath its windows, the air seems to grow colder, as if the old walls remember the desperation of a young woman torn between duty and passion. And when the wind whistles through the alleys and the steps below, it is said you may still hear the ghostly pounding of hooves, racing towards a fate that was never kind. Bowes Railway. In the quiet countryside of Springwell lies the Bowes Railway, once a proud monument of the industrial age. Built in the 19th century, it was part of the great network that hauled coal from pit to port, its engines roaring, its wheels clanging and its men blackened with soot. Though the clatter of industry has long since fallen silent, the railway endures as a museum. Yet those who walk its grounds after hours speak of presences that are far from mechanical. The most frequent apparition is that of a man in overalls and cap. He appears solid, purposeful, striding across the engineering sheds as though still tending to his duties. Witnesses describe the moment with unease, for the figure never acknowledges them. He simply fades mid-step, as if swallowed by the very air. There are stranger signs too. Visitors have caught the strong scent of soap, where none was in use, lingering in workshops, where men once washed the grime from their skin. Children's laughter has been heard ringing among the engines, though no children were present. Doors creak open on their own. Tools clatter in empty rooms. And now and then, footsteps echo along the wooden walkways, steady and deliberate, keeping pace with the living before vanishing into silence. Some nights, the faint hiss of steam and the clang of metal have been reported as though the engines themselves stir to life, their ghosts unwilling to rest. A volunteer once reported being alone in the sheds when the air turned cold. From the shadows came the sound of boots scuffing against the floor. He called out expecting a colleague, but no one replied. The sensation of being observed grew unbearable until he fled into the daylight. Some believe the ghosts of the Bowes Railway are the spirits of workers bound to the place where their sweat and labor shaped their lives. Others suggest the restless energy of industry itself has imprinted upon the buildings. Whatever the truth, the railway hums with more than history. It is a place where echoes of toil still linger and where the silence of the engines is never truly empty. All Saints' Church, high above the bend of the River Tyne, rises the elegant spire of All Saints' Church. Its graceful dome and Georgian lines make it one of the city's landmarks, a place of worship and reflection for centuries. Yet beneath its beauty lies a tale that darkens the churchyard. For among its servants was a man remembered in whispers as Jack the Beadle. In life, Jack was charged with keeping order in the church and guarding the grounds, but greed overcame his duty. He was caught stealing lead from the coffins of the recently buried, prizing the precious metal from the very resting places he was sworn to protect. For this crime, he was sentenced to 2 years of hard labor. When he died, his body was committed to the earth, but it seems his spirit was not so easily laid to rest. For years, parishioners have spoken of a solitary figure wandering the churchyard after dark, a lantern held in one hand. Some describe a tall shadow moving steadily among the graves. Others recall a pale face flickering in the lantern's light before vanishing into the night air. A local man once swore he followed the bobbing light across the yard only for it to disappear abruptly at the foot of a headstone. When he drew near, there was nothing but silence. At times, a faint scratching sound has been heard against the stones, as if Jack still prizes at the coffins in eternal penance. Footsteps, too, have been heard crunching on gravel paths when no one walks there, and a coldness lingers in the air as if the church itself resents his trespass. Even inside, faint tapping sounds and the soft sigh of breath have unsettled those who linger too long after service. Today, All Saints is preserved as part of Newcastle's heritage. Yet, its churchyard carries an uneasy stillness, as if Jack the Beadle still prowls with his lantern, condemned to guard the very graves he once defiled. And when the wind stirs across the stones, it seems to whisper his name. Grand Hotel. On the windswept seafront of Sunderland, where the North Sea crashes against the promenade, stands the Grand Hotel. In earlier years, it was known as the Seaburn Hotel, a place of elegance and sea air, where guests came for leisure and fine company. Yet behind its bright windows and polished reception desk lies a tale of something far more unsettling. The most frequently seen apparition here is known as the Grey Lady. Unlike the pale figures of mist that haunt many old houses, she is said to appear almost solid, her long grey hair falling across her shoulders, her presence undeniable. Guests have mistaken her for a fellow visitor, exchanging polite words before realizing she is not of this world. One former staff member told of working late in the corridor when she felt the brush of fingers at the back of her neck. Startled, she turned to find no one there. The same night, another colleague swore he glimpsed a woman in grey slipping around a corner, her footsteps making no sound upon the carpet. Others have spoken of her creeping quietly behind them, her presence revealed only by the icy chill she leaves in her wake. Some even described hearing a low murmur, a woman's voice whispering just beyond recognition, fading into silence as quickly as it comes. She seems neither hostile nor kind, merely restless. Some say she was a guest of the hotel long ago, perhaps bereaved, perhaps broken-hearted, her sorrow binding her to the place. Whatever her story, she has made the Grand Hotel her domain, moving silently through its hallways and unsettling those who cross her path. Visitors may come seeking sea views and hospitality, but some leave with a memory far stranger. For when night falls and the wind rattles the windows, the Grey Lady walks again unseen, by most yet never truly absent. And so the Grand Hotel remains not just a home for travelers, but a resting place for one who never truly checked out. Tyne and Wear Priory and Castle. At the very edge of the land, where cliffs plunge into the restless sea, lie the ruins of Tyne and Wear Priory and Castle. Exposed to the wind and salt, the crumbling arches and broken towers stand as a sentinel above the harbour, their stones scarred by centuries of devotion and attack. Monks once prayed here, their chants carried out across the waves. Raiders came too, Vikings fierce and merciless, leaving both blood and legend behind. At night, locals sometimes speak of hearing the low murmur of chanting carried on the wind, as though the voices of the monks have never been silenced. Among the tales told is that of Olaf the Viking. During a raid, he was struck down and left for dead, but the monks carried him into the priory and nursed him back to health. In gratitude, Olaf renounced his raiding kin and swore to defend the holy place. Yet fate dealt him a cruel blow. When the next attack came, Olaf fought bravely, only to realize that one of the men he struck down was his own brother. Overcome with grief and horror, he died soon after, his heart broken beyond repair. Some say the very stone where he fell still weeps salt water, glistening unnaturally even in dry weather. It is said that Olaf's spirit still walks among the ruins. Visitors speak of a tall, broad-shouldered warrior, glimpsed against the dusk, his expression solemn, his presence both fierce and sorrowful. Some claim to hear his voice carried on the sea wind, calling in a tongue long forgotten. There is also the figure of a monk in a brown habit, kneeling beside the ancient monk's stone, a golden belt shining faintly before the apparition fades. On stormy nights, when the sea crashes furiously below, the ruins seem to tremble with unseen footsteps, as if the past refuses to release its grip. By day, Tyne and Wear Priory is a place of history, of school groups and tourists, of sea air and coastal views. But when darkness falls and the waves beat against the cliffs, the priory feels far from empty. Here, faith and blood devotion and despair remain entangled. And in the silence of night, you may sense that both monk and warrior still linger, bound forever to the stones above the sea. The castles fall silent, the halls grow dark, yet whispers remain. Subscribe to Creepy Experience. like and share, and prepare for the next shadow waiting in the dark.